Hello, my name is Terry Irwin, and I'm a professor in the School of Design at Carnegie Mellon University and director of the Transition Design Institute there. This presentation is an overview of a 6-month research project to understand the perspectives and concerns of stakeholders connected to the problem of a lack of funding for minority entrepreneurs in the US and the UK. This research was commissioned by the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center and was carried out by the Transition Design Institute at Carnegie Mellon, who are one of 10 partners researching the many facets of this complex wicked problem. This 7th video describes the final step of research, which asks stakeholders to propose solutions to the problem. They propose solutions within the 5 sectors from the problem map and considered the levels of scale at which each solution might be most effective. The map that resulted is a rich reservoir of solutions that have the potential for broad stakeholder support. The data gathered from the 4 stakeholder groups resulted in these 6 systems maps, and this video reports on the final map highlighted in the blue box and the insights it produced. This final step can be found on the Miro board in the 3rd column from the right. The systems map is at the top with the analysis situated directly below it. All of the previous data gathering steps were undertaken really in order to get us to this step: designing ecologies of systems interventions, clusters of different projects and initiatives situated in different societal sectors at different levels of scale that together have enough traction to destabilize the wicked problem and jumpstart the transition toward its resolution. The research team aggregated all responses from all stakeholder groups into this matrix with the 5 societal sectors from the problem map on the left vertical axis and the 5 levels of everyday life from the vision map along the top horizontal axis. This matrix shows us where stakeholders think solutions are needed, what they are, and where new opportunities exist. Next, the research team developed a second matrix that aggregated solution proposals that were harvested from all of the 5 other systems maps. And then once again, identified high-level categories that the stakeholder solutions fell within. These categories were placed along the top horizontal axis of the matrix, and the 4 stakeholder groups were listed along the left-hand vertical matrix. At the top of the board, there is a graphic key that shows from which of the systems maps a proposed solution has been harvested. This aggregated matrix creates a massive reservoir of solution concepts proposed by stakeholders themselves. And this is in contrast to traditional problem-solving approaches in which outside experts are paid to study the problem for a brief period of time, then develop solutions aimed at a single issue that is really a piece of the larger problem. Here you can see ideas contributed by both Black entrepreneurs and capital allocators within the solution categories of changing lending practices and metrics, creating new forms of investing, and advising, mentoring, and creating networks of help and exchange. And as we move along the matrix, we see the other solution categories that emerged from the workshop. What is key about this type of research is that the stakeholders connected to and affected by the problem of a lack of funding for minority entrepreneurs are identifying the areas in which solutions are needed and then proposing very specific ideas for projects and initiatives to address them. We encourage users to spend some time perusing this matrix in order to appreciate the depth and breadth of solutions being proposed. After analyzing the solutions matrix, the research team conducted affinity mapping to create this solutions matrix. Here you see the 4 stakeholder groups along the top and the list of solution categories proposed by them on the vertical axis at left. Once again, the size of the circles indicates the degree of importance each group assigned to a particular solutions category. This matrix tells us what type of solutions each group feels are most important, and also reveals stakeholder agreement among the solution categories. As I mentioned before, this is what we refer to as the low-hanging fruit in the system, in the funding of solutions that are likely to have broad stakeholder support and where early, quick wins can happen. The diagram on the left shows where there is broad agreement about solution categories among all groups. We've then mapped those solution categories against the stakeholder fears and concerns matrix from step 2. And we speculate about the potential for each solution category to address multiple fears and concerns simultaneously. We also map the solution categories against those from the problem map in step 1 and found even greater potential for solutions to address multiple issues at once. Mapping the solutions proposed by stakeholders against the issues and concerns they themselves shared in the workshop is really our key research objective, leveraging knowledge from within the system to create solutions that solve for multiple issues simultaneously and that have broad stakeholder support. All of the steps in this research project are aimed at creating a systemic overview of the problem, deepening stakeholders and other constituencies' understanding of it, and generating a wealth of solution concepts that are likely to have broad support. These ecologies of systems interventions are clusters of interrelated solutions based upon stakeholder input that solve for multiple issues simultaneously. The final analysis board for step 6 shows how to use the Affinity Matrix, number 1, in conjunction with the Solutions Matrix, number 2, to develop those ecologies of interventions that address the problem of a lack of funding for minority entrepreneurs. Using the Affinity Matrix, we can identify solution categories that have the strongest interest and support among stakeholder groups. And as you can see, there are several solution categories upon which they agree. This matrix should be considered a toolkit, and countless configurations could be used. But for this example, I'll work with these 3 categories: changing lending practices and metrics, technology and data assistance and access, and promotion, raising awareness, role models, and new narratives. In other words, getting positive stories about minority entrepreneurs out there. Remember that we said that systemic solutions are interconnected and scaffold each other. So to begin, we ask what an ecology of interconnected solutions might look like at the intersection of these 3 categories. Let's start with changing lending practices and metrics. Remember that these solution categories emerge directly out of the stakeholder responses. To look for solution concepts, we now return to matrix number 2 to review the ideas stakeholders proposed for changing lending practices and metrics. We're essentially using this matrix as a storehouse of stakeholder solution ideas, and we're looking for the ones that not only address the issues related to changing lending practices and metrics, but ones that also have the potential to complement and scaffold solutions in those other 2 areas. So once again, we identify concepts we think might connect to the other solution areas, and we pull these up and place them next to their parent problem category. And we can see that within these solution concepts, there's a lot of diversity and complementarity. And we do this for each of the 3 categories, looking for the strongest ideas from the matrix, but also the ones that have broad stakeholder support. Here you see ideas proposed from all 4 stakeholder groups that address technology and data-related issues. And here are ideas related to the 3rd category of raising awareness and promoting minority entrepreneurship. So we now have the raw concept material necessary to begin crafting an ecology of systems interventions that address the problem of a lack of funding for minority entrepreneurs. What is different about this approach is that the ideas for the solutions are coming directly from the stakeholders connected to and affected by the problem, not outside experts whose knowledge about the problem, time, and expertise is limited. In this way, the approach leverages knowledge and expertise from inside the system, and the role of outside consultants shifts from expert to enabler, who helps shape, fund, and implement stakeholder ideas. The work of crafting the solution cluster should be done in a co-design process with stakeholders, but our research team created 2 different prototype ecologies to demonstrate how stakeholders, funders, and a range of support organizations can begin to work with what I'll call the solutions toolbox, populated by the stakeholder participants. Here you see proposals for 4 different projects and initiatives that sit at the intersection of the 3 solution categories. All proposals are based directly upon stakeholder responses, but have been slightly refined to connect with each other. You'll also see that projects can be quite different and still connect to and scaffold each other, which is a characteristic of system solutions. It doesn't mean they're alike, but rather complementary in their ability to address different facets of this complex problem. So in this solution cluster, you see that we've created an ecology with 6 interrelated and interdependent projects that would be situated in different societal sectors and at different levels of scale. It's also likely they would have different timelines and lifespans. When you visit the Monroe board, you'll notice that there is a second solution cluster on the right that's based upon 3 different solution categories. So hopefully this demonstrates how the data collected directly from stakeholders in the online workshop can be used to create tangible, fundable solutions that are likely to have broad stakeholder support. These prototype solution clusters can be used in a variety of ways. They could be taken back to a wider stakeholder audience for further vetting and refinement. They could be shown to potential funders, or they can help inform additional and more focused scopes of future research. The analysis board shows the 3-step process I just explained for using the data to develop solution ecologies. To conclude, I want to reiterate just a few of our key findings from the research. First, we found that the problem affects entire communities. Stakeholder responses indicate that a lack of funding for minority entrepreneurs has adverse effects that extend beyond these entrepreneurs to compromise entire minority communities and their future generations. So problem resolution will not only result in innovation and value creation within business, but will ignite positive systems level change within minority entrepreneurs' communities and create exponential positive change for their future generations. Second, stakeholders told us that problematic mindsets and beliefs are root causes of the problem. Stakeholders cited racism and otherness as among the most significant roots of the problem and are part of larger interconnected systems of oppression. These non-material attitudes become formalized and materialized in societal infrastructure, practice, laws, etc. So any solution aimed at addressing the latter must be complemented by solutions aimed at changing these problematic mindsets, beliefs, and assumptions. And finally, both a root cause and consequence of the problem is inequitable access to crucial infrastructure. Stakeholder responses cited an inequitable access to both the infrastructure and support necessary for successful entrepreneurship as a root cause of the problem, i.e. internet, networks of support, and a dearth of role models and success stories. The data gathered contains a wealth of suggestions for solutions to address all of these, most of which represent clear, fundable interventions with the potential to address myriad interrelated issues connected to the problem. All of the steps in this research project are aimed at creating a systemic overview of the problem, deepening stakeholder and other constituencies' understanding of it, and generating a wealth of solution concepts that are likely to have broad stakeholder support. As I mentioned at the beginning, research such as this generates a wealth of information that cannot be adequately represented in either a report or a series of video presentations like this. So we recommend that you now visit the Miro board and peruse the results and listen to the stakeholder voices for yourself. To view the board, you'll need to sign up for a free Miro account, and you will then have viewing privileges to navigate around the board as much as you would a Google map or any other online environment. Miro has great tutorials, but it's not difficult. We hope that these videos, along with the systems maps you'll find in Miro, will provide you with a deeper systemic understanding of the problem of a lack of funding for minority entrepreneurs and illustrate the way in which resolving this problem can catalyze positive systems level change in countless other areas. And finally, we want to thank the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center for making this research possible, and thank our other research